I've really been making things for as long as I can remember. My mum studied textiles at the Royal College of Art and ran art classes. So my home was a place of creativity. Art was something that I could filter my life through. It's really about communication, about how we connect to one another or how we fail to connect to one another. I've been looking at sculptures of statues and statuary for quite a while. This idea of something which occupies space, it kind of carries with it this sort of gravitas and an expectation of conforming to particular tropes in terms of what qualifies someone, an individual, to be a sculpture. So what happens if it's not actually a singular person? The sculpture itself is called The Distance Within. It refers to this sort of internal space that we all live in. But it's also about technology, this idea of this mobile device being connected to something global. Beyond the point of it not being a white man on a horse, we've got a black person standing 9 foot tall in bronze in a public space. As a real person who looks like that, it makes me think about what it means to occupy that space, that freedom to exist safely and to be seen and to be valued. Given all the quite horrendous things that have happened to particularly black men in the US and in the UK. I'm from Brixton, which is very similar to Harlem. Brixton is sort of one of the epicenters of black culture in the UK. This is the park where I grew up. This is where, I'd come and put my little homemade sailboats on the pond and run around with my brothers. Brixton's kind of gone through a serious level of gentrification, I think in a way that Harlem is experiencing now, which has been sort of painful to watch. I've been interested in what it means to belong or be moved along and then have an area being talked about as if it's coming up because, the locals are being moved out. All these things are happening globally. I go to Harlem quite a lot, so for me that was like a home away from home. And Marcus Garvey Park, it's just such an active park. It seems like part of the hub of the community, and it's one that I've visited so many times. That space is really owned by the people who are there. I love the way that can make people more willing to ask difficult questions about the work and allow them to put other sculptures into context. If we're going to have more sculptures, more monuments, do we really want to continue that history of celebrating the great people in the world? Because, well, how do we decide what's great? I think that's why it's so important that the works that I try to do are fictional. I would see someone and it might be something about the way they looked that would manifest this kind of feeling. I'd be like, I recognise that feeling, and I want to see if someone else recognises that feeling. Now, I've always embraced technology within my practice. The distance within is holding a cell phone. And it's interesting how technology has allowed me to actually kind of create this work at a distance from London in New York, because obviously we've had a pandemic and I'm not being able to visit. The fact that I use digital sculpting really opened up the possibilities for then fabricating the work in the US. Bronze has been the material of power for so many centuries, thousands of years in fact. I wanted to connect to that history and I wanted to disrupt this lineage of power. I'm very, very particular about the surface finish. The surface is treated with heat and chemicals to create this really deep black patina, which almost looks like plastic to me, and I quite like the way it subverts this notion of value in bronze. I saw it installed via video. I think that was probably one of the more nerve-wracking moments. To even see the crowds gather as it was going into the grounds and connecting to that work before it was fully installed was a really nice moment to have. I really wanted people in Harlem to see themselves in the work or to see someone they know in that work. to challenge the different ways we've been told that we're acceptable, and to say that you're acceptable the way you are, and to have pride in that. It's very much about opening up our awareness of the works that exist in the world that we occupy, and making us start to discuss what we want to be there in the future.